Welcome everyone to the return of the Racist War on Everything. I am Fenian, joined by Nolsey.
Hello.
Hope the sound quality is a little better. I'll turn yourself up, Nolsey, or closer to the mic if you're speaking.
All right, I'll see what I can do just quickly.
Okay, you're all right there.
All right.
Yeah, as promised, returning towards the end of September and having to reset up all my stuff again in a mad rush. But anyway, we're back. We're ready to go with more Racist War and more stuff from the racer. We'll cover the referendum, which is, well, actually only 3 weeks away now. Yeah, it's very close. The Yes camp is getting very desperate and trying to pull some rabbits out of the hat, which of course we'll get to. But yeah, things will just kind of roll along as per usual with the racer. My understanding is that XYZ is, pretty much gone. David doesn't want to do it anymore, and yeah, that's it. Not too much more to say on that. So if we do anything in terms of live streaming and that, just watch out for what we say on Telegram and post and everything. We'll definitely let you know. But there definitely will be a race that decides for the referendum. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
On to The Voice. And look, we're not going to do a catch-up episode, considering we've been away for about 5 weeks. That would be one hell of a catch-up episode. So we're just going by the stories of the past week.
Fuck all has changed.
No, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, dude, fuck all has changed. It's just been this continuous fucking shitfest slog that is, existing in Australia. One thing I did want to talk about, though, was Peter Dutton's decision to promise a second referendum on The Voice if the no vote wins. I need the Greg Conte drop here, the what is going on. This blew my mind when I read it when I was on holiday. I was like, what is this man thinking? This is the guy who, politically anyway, in terms of the parliamentary opposition to the Indigenous voice, this guy is the ugly face of it. And it's not like he hasn't capitulated before on this issue. As we've discussed many times, he supports a legislative voice. He said that a future coalition government would legislate for it. He also said that Albo should have legislated the voice when he came into power so that he didn't have to have this divisive referendum. He also said that a no vote, which remember he's supposed to support, would end up further dividing Australia and setting back reconciliation with Aborigines. Now he's saying that if that no vote were to go through and you would have that new division and setting back a reconciliation, that he would get everyone or give everyone the opportunity to do it all over again. Have that vote again. Yeah.
And have it
okay, like tell me you're running like a crackpot government without telling me you're running a fucking crackpot government. Oh wait, you just did.
Surely we know that when governments propose referenda, I should say, they want them to pass. Paul Keating was the one who set in motion the Republic referendum. I know it occurred under Howard, but the Constitutional Convention and everything was organised by Keating. It wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Keating. When governments always try to shove daylight savings down our throats here in WA, we've actually defeated that 4 times. There's been 4 referenda, and all of them have been unsuccessful. Obviously, they are introducing it because they support it. Why else would they just keep trying? The idea is eventually you just get one that wins, one referendum that wins, and then you're stuck with it and you never get another one again. Yeah. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So
European Union does the same thing with like bills and little fucking securities and contingencies that it wants to get done. It just makes a country vote on it over and over and over again until they get a yes.
Right. So this is just another example of how Peter Dutton does not look very committed to the no vote for the voice. He essentially is saying that I just don't like a few minor details in the proposed constitutional model. That's it. I actually do support a voice, and I'll even have another referendum on it if you just kind of tweak it that little bit. So it's extremely confused messaging, and Dutton's not the only one to have confused messaging on this. I mean, if you look at the grassroots campaign, I think there's probably two faces of that. One is Jacinta Price, even though she's in Parliament too. She's out there on the road all the time doing the speeches. And the other one is Warren Mundine. I don't know if you caught Warren Mundine's interview on Insiders last week, but this was even like, I'm not sure which one to say is worse, Dutton or Mundine on this. But again,
Mundine just because he's an idiot.
Look, quite possibly. I don't know. I could tell though that when like Warren Mundine was talking here, answering David Spears' questions, it wasn't the typical kind of like pre-rehearsed sound bites that Dutton would obviously take part in. He was speaking off the cuff, and too much so. He wasn't prepared enough to kind of answer Spears' questions tactically. And well, anyway, what am I talking about? So obviously he opposes the voice. However, he said that he supports treaties, plural treaties, not just a treaty. And he made reference to the various negotiations that are going on at the state and territory level for those treaties to take part. And remember, treaties, we really should just say compensation or reparations. That's essentially what it is. So he supports that. And also, he supports the change of Australia Day. He wants the date changed. So not only is that sort of muddled messaging, because it seems a bit weird to say you oppose this one thing, but you support the other. So, you're very kind of fence sitting, or you're very all over the shop. The other thing is it's contradictory to what are some of the main arguments against the voice. That is that, primarily that the voice leads to treaty and truth-telling. And representations made by the voice would result in changes to Australia Day. Okay? This is something that the No Camp has been consistently arguing, because the Uluru Statement from the Heart has 3 pillars: voice, truth, treaty. And we have been told by many Aboriginal activists, who may actually get on that advisory board, that of course things like Australia Day would have advice provided for. Why wouldn't it? It's designed to tackle issues that are pertinent to the Aboriginal community, and obviously Australia Day is part of that. So here's Warren Mundine saying that he supports treaties in the plural sense, which is even worse than what some people want. Like, the multiple treaties would be worse than the Commonwealth Treaty.
Yep.
And that he supports this change of date as well. Now, further to that, this is where it got really weird. Warren Mundine said that a no vote would actually increase the likelihood of these various treaties coming to fruition throughout the country. What? How? Now, look, I still think that the yes vote is going to die. Okay, the polling is just too weak, and I can't see how they can turn it around in only 3 weeks. So I'm not saying that
it's kind of done.
Yeah,
the little NGOs doing it. Obviously, Yes 23 is like the one made for this doing it. They're trying their hardest. They're going on Twitter and etc. But like dude, I saw like internal memos from like volunteers from about 3 weeks ago saying that they've already conceded the fight. Then they're just moving on to the legislative level.
Yeah, and I don't blame them for doing that, for seeing the writing on the wall. So, I would say that if this is an own goal by Warren Mundine, it's sort of too little too late for the yes side. But that doesn't mean it was just fucking stupid. And like, how on earth they weren't able to kind of preempt questions like that, considering that he's on the record of supporting the date change, supporting treaties that, behind the scenes, that the advisors in the No campaign should have been telling Warren Mundine what to say, not come up with these completely muddled and contradictory messages right there. Because now you're left with a state where people are saying, okay, maybe I will just vote yes anyway because the no vote is actually going to lead to all these treaties. That's in a way sort of perhaps reassuring people that, like, look, if you vote yes, it won't go any further, okay? You just need to concede a little bit to save a lot in the future. Some people might buy that kind of message from Warren Mundine, and they actually think that, no, if we set reconciliation back, you're going to piss off the Aboriginal elite even more, and they're going to react. And they're going to come back with even worse policies like multiple treaties.
Oh, yes, threats. That always works.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, as if you're going to get... the advisory board, the voice to Parliament, would make threats all the time. Its simple existence and going against its advice is a risk because it can be a PR nightmare for them, and considering how much our politicians want a virtue signal from every side of politics, we know that even though there is no technical veto power, it doesn't mean you can't be convicted in the court of public opinion and have your hand forced in that way.
Also, just from the public pressure, the media pressure.
Yeah. Oh, yes, and that as well. Yeah, but I just mean in terms of like the threats that they're issuing. Yes. So, yes, that was stupid. Jacinta Price is still out there. She's doing like some teary speeches now. She got a bit emotional, not at the National Press Club, but another one. And this is like causing all these conservatives just to, oh man, like I can't believe how much they're falling over themselves to worship and grovel and fucking lick the boot of this woman. Just because she goes out there and, she talks about the violence in the communities and everything and how it's touched her and all of that. And we need real action. And the conservative action, remember, is, funnily enough, more state intervention, because even though they're said to be the party of small government, the Northern Territory intervention into Aboriginal communities was nowhere near limited. It was a full-on military-style intervention that occurred. And that is the only thing you can do if you seriously want to clean up the mess in those communities. It's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, send in the fucking zookeepers.
So they're really your alternatives, is just go the cucky route where we just keep getting Abers everything they want and letting them off for violent crime and everything. Or you just have a military-style intervention into the densely populated areas that costs us an absolute shitload of money. That's really it. They're your choices. Anyway, around the country, there were a bunch of no-vote protests today and some counter-demonstrations. There was a nice little counter-demonstration in Adelaide, if you saw that. The rabid right-winger Alex Antic was there, and he filmed himself as he walked in. And there was all these ferals out there flipping off the cameras and, of course, yelling things like Nazi scum and racist and crazy wankers, I think, was another one, which was a bit of a strange one.
Cookers. Cookers is a new one. Well, not Cookers, a new one, but yeah. Cookers. Yeah, that's like a conspiracy nut. Cookers, like as in their brain is cooked.
Oh. Okay, I haven't heard that one before. Well, yeah, I mean, this is one of the tricks they're trying to pull out of the hat now is they're trying to say that the no vote is actually run by white supremacists and conspiracy kooks. We'll get to that, but let's talk about the protests first. So look, I didn't bother to go. One of the reasons I didn't really bother to go was, for one thing, I didn't know anyone else was going. But also, like, these were originally billed anyway as freedom marches, much like the anti-lockdown stuff. Yeah, and you've got a lot of people there that are alt-light types and Zio shills and Just like, the type who say, like, let's close our borders and double our aid to Israel at the same time. Those kind of types who I don't have any time for. So yeah, that's the main reason I didn't go out to that. But also it's like just the way they're tackling their opposition to the voice. Like I saw some signs, like some photos are up, where they said no to racism. It's this idea, it's about the division that's happening and separating us and categorizing us as different political
Let's
and ethnic
make our
groups.
opposition as retarded as possible.
Yeah. It's like, guys, that division, or that racism, if you want to call it that, is already there. And you will never, ever get rid of it. You know why? Because it's hardwired into our genes.
Yep.
All right? Politics does not create race. It's already there. All right? And politics is downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from race. And you can't convert to another race, no matter how much Rachel Dolezal might want to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why, I didn't have much time for these protests. Now, one thing that, though, maybe would have convinced me to go was the fact that Peter Dutton basically opposed it as well, right? Now, the reason why, and the Australian is jumping on with this as well, is that it's partly run by Simeon Boykov, aka
oh god,
the Aussie Cossack, right?
Yeah, now, no, dude, they fucking made meat and potatoes. I was like, oh no, all these no campaigns are being actually secretly run by a Russian propagandist in Australia. I'm just like, I know who you're talking about. Why the fuck are you making him sound like a foreign intelligence agent?
Yeah,
he's a nice guy, but he's not exactly like fucking, fucking 00 Moscow or some shit like that. He's not fucking like, running the number stations.
Yeah, look, I'm just kind of indifferent to him. To me, like, if you're a European here, and when I look at that guy, I got to say, he looks like a Genghis Khan rape descendant. He doesn't look entirely European, I gotta say. He's definitely descends from a more Asiatic part of Russia.
This man genetically looks like he flays and cooks a goat out in the middle of an open plain somewhere in the very far east of Europe.
Right, and look, as far as I'm concerned, if you're a European here in Australia, you should just get behind an Australian-European identity and not bring your original country's ethnic conflicts with you. I don't go and stage protests outside of Presbyterian churches, for example, because my background is Irish Catholic. Okay, and I never will do that either. That's bullshit. I've heard like dickheads who've who have a Serbian background go and harass Bosnian Muslims in Australia. Why? What the fuck is the point of that? That is fucking just pathetic. And I feel like the same way with him. It's like, why are you bringing all of this? This isn't Russia. This is fucking Australia, okay? Anyway, but again, this was mixed messaging from Dutton. He is so careful to try and disassociate himself from like the fringe right, the cook right, I guess now we can say, thanks to that term. That he there he is saying, okay, yeah, I support the no vote, but don't turn up to one of these protests. Don't do that because there's bad people there.
There's very few instances where we'll activate or advocate for inaction, but like this is fucking one of them.
Yeah, well, look, does the left do this? Does the left say, okay, because there's a huge, basically anyone who's a member of the Communist Party is going to support it, right? Fair to say?
Because of its history.
Do they tell people, hey, don't turn up to the Yes rally because there's going to be some communists there? Of course not. All right. Now, I know I just said that I didn't bother to turn up and everything like that before because these are people I don't want to associate with. But that is not the same as a politician who, like I said, is the parliamentary face of the no vote. He should be out there saying, no, get out there and vote, And I think what we're doing anyway is a lot more by putting these messages out there. Some of the messages that XYZ were putting out there, I think, is a much more effective way of it. And more than anything, I'll just say reporting on Aboriginal crime. The more people know about that, the less likely they are to support the voice.
That was like the biggest turnaround in polls, like during that massive fucking crime spree.
Yes, yeah. I mean, to talk about Jacinta Price again, the Conservative press was saying that her National Press Club speech could be a turning point in the debate. I'm like, no, the turning point was Alice Springs, guys. Okay, this has had basically nothing to do with Jacinta Price and her emotional speeches. This is just people witnessing what Aboriginal people are like when you don't control them, when you don't have the adequate law and order resources.
It's someone's first time seeing the Aboriginal house inspection video on YouTube, and by the way, you can look that up, Aboriginal house inspection. If you haven't looked at it, I suggest you do.
It's surprising how there's still a lot of those like Aboriginal person goes crazy on train videos there are still on YouTube. Yep. A lot of them have been taken down, but a lot of them have survived as well. So yeah, no. We all know it's going to be dead. So other stuff on The Voice. Just quickly, I mentioned Warren Mundine. He's pulling out of the Senate race now. So there was a vacant spot for New South Wales, made vacant by Maurice Payne, former Morrison minister. So now it looks like Andrew Constance, who was, I think he was the Transport Minister in New South Wales, State Transport Minister, that is. He seems to be the front runner now. But I have no doubt that if Warren Mundine had stayed in the race for that, he would have gotten it. You know, I mean, just look at how well Jacinta Price has been treated by the coalition. She became like the opposition Indigenous Affairs spokesman as soon as Julian Leeser resigned to the backbench. You know, because he supports the yes vote, he had to go to the backbench. So yeah, I've no doubt it would have been him. But also, I actually didn't know this before, but the last CPAC, if people know, we do have a CPAC here in Australia.
Regrettably.
Yeah, I know, it's dumb. And it still attracts all of the, like, Antifa and everything out there calling them Nazis and whatnot. Their last event was actually put together by Warren Mundine. So even though Warren Mundine is a former president of the Labor Party, he supports the Change of Australia Day. He supports multiple Aboriginal and Australian treaties to be made throughout the country. He's still putting himself forward as a conservative. And they're going on now about footage that has surfaced of this guy called Elijah Schaffer. I had never heard of this guy, so I just quickly looked him up. He was on
Elijah
Blaze
Schaffer.
TV. You know Blaze TV, which is Glenn Beck's network?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's from that. So he's just, I don't know, he reminds me a bit of Stephen Crowder. Like, he tries to inject comedy into what he's doing, but it just falls flat all the time. But this is a guy who apparently just made racist comments towards Aborigines and also derogatory comments to the gay community. Now, the fact that when I went to find out what these quotes were, they were never in there, suggests to me that they were very innocuous comments. Usually if they say something good, like if the word, the F word is in there, we might be on YouTube right now, so I can't say it. You know, they'll write the F and then they'll write a bunch of asterisks next to it. So I couldn't find any examples of this guy actually saying anything anti-gay or anti-Aboriginal or anything. But he did say that Australian politicians seem to be more interested in serving the interests of one very small group at the expense of the Australian community at large. That seemed to be the only thing, anyway, I could find in print that they could have latched onto. And I'm just thinking, okay,
they get pissy at Elijah Schaffer because he'll interact with people on Twitter. That's about it.
Yeah, God knows, man. I haven't been on Twitter in ages, or X, so I don't know what the hell it is. So yeah, these are the rabbits that they're trying to pull out of the hat now. We'll move on to the association with the far right or the extreme right or whatever. There you go. There's one. They're saying Warren Mundine is too close to these radical American right wingers. But also, they're also just saying, that no protests are being infiltrated by people like us, I guess you could say. But they're also talking about, they mentioned XYZ. So did you see this article? Where was it? Oh yeah, it was in the ABC. Talking about this guy who goes under the name Blacklisted Research. That's a channel on YouTube. It's also a channel on Telegram. They're both good, by the way. I recommend them. But they had been putting out this documentary that actually dates back to 1983 or so. Very old one when the native title and Mabo debate was happening. The documentary is called Red Over Black. And it was basically
Mabo wasn't a communist. Mabo wasn't a communist. Why are you putting out this dated documentary saying he's a communist? Oh, okay. Here's photos of him at the fucking Australian Communist meeting.
Right. Yeah, it's the very same when you look at all these black activists anyway. I mean, okay, nowadays they may not be members of the Communist Party. But if you go back to up to like the late 80s, pretty much any like left-wing nationalist activists, like chip on the shoulder ethnic nationalism, you could say, for minority groups, for blacks, for Native Americans, for Aborigines, whatever, they're pretty much all affiliated with the Communist Party. That's absolutely true. And yeah, when I read The Breakup of Australia by Windshuttle, he went through all of like the original advocates of constitutional recognition and a voice to parliament. They were pretty much all communists. Or if they weren't members, they at least describe themselves as Marxists. So no, that's not hyperbole at all. To be
we're not fucking like boomer Facebook posting here.
We're doing that a little bit. I'm about to add some nuance to it. Look, I've only actually gone through about half of it, but the documentary doesn't say that. As far as I know, anyway, maybe they said this later on. I don't think they did. That we're going to just turn into an outright Marxist state or a communist state. They're just saying that like there are some parallels because of the fact that it goes from a system of private to so-called public property. Where you have the government kind of acting as the steward of all of these areas of native title on behalf of various Aboriginal tribes. Now, in that respect, if you want to talk about it as in like the theft of private property, well, that's exactly what native title ended up with a lot of the time. Or we ended up with like a kind of a corporate mess where there was bribes made by resources companies to the tribal groups that goes on to this day. So, the name would still be, the deed or whatever would still be in the name of the tribe or the individual or whoever, but the resources company effectively owns it because they're bribing them with all of this royalty money. So that's what we ended up with. So in that respect, the predictions that Red Over Black made were true, were perfectly true. So it has been, circulated again, for example, by Blacklisted Research, by XYZ. But look, I'll just say to people, you can actually watch there's like 4 or 5 versions on it on YouTube right now. You can go and search it. Surprisingly, they haven't taken it down. I found one that was uploaded 6 years ago. Okay. That is not as if it just resurfaced. That was 6 years ago. All right. It was really only Blacklisted Research and XYZ who kind of said, hey, there's this old documentary. It might be worth watching again. That was really it. So they're getting desperate. And the guy in it, what's his name? They tried to paint him as like a white supremacist Nazi as well. Jeff McDonald. Jeff McDonald was a former Trotskyite, all right, former communist himself. Then he just kind of turned into an anti-communist. He effectively turned into like a classical liberal type, and he said native title is an attack on private property. That was it. Not much of a white supremacist, I don't think.
No. Hey, but we have to put the accusation in there somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the current tactic. Now, guys, 3 weeks left. You must be getting desperate now. You're actually publishing stuff on articles that XYZ wrote a few months ago now. And you're focusing on some guy on Telegram who basically is a shitposter. That's not an insult, by the way, but, he is a bit of a shitposter. He puts out some good stuff. Yeah, so what? It should have been known right from the beginning that guys like us were not going to support this. And for very good reason, too. So this guilt by association tactic that they're running is just going to be ineffective completely. I don't think it's going to make a single difference in what's going on here. Okay. Now, apparently we do have record high enrollment. So this is the highest rate of enrollment since Federation. 97.7% of those eligible to vote in Australia are actually enrolled just in time for this referendum. Now, can you imagine what this might be? Why is it that it was now that this happened?
Why are people giving a shit?
Yeah, but how I think what's happening is that the Yes campaign is trying to, because who would be the demographic of people in Australia least likely to be enrolled to vote? It's the race with, the least amount of agency. Okay, just like they had a nightmare trying to get them all vaccinated, and they had to put out that video with Mark McGowan.
Oh Jesus!
And just like they don't do just normal things like go to the doctor or the dentist or whatever. This is just. Every time you find a race like the less agency they have, the less intelligence they have, the less likely they are to do everyday civic engagements like enrolling to vote, voting,
or feeding their kids.
Checkups. Yes, feeding their kids, going shopping for groceries instead of booze and drugs, all those kind of things. So I don't think it's any coincidence that this being a vote on an Aboriginal voice suddenly meant there was record enrollment, because the Yes camp have been down there in these communities trying to rile up all of the populations there who never fucking vote. Go out and get registered. And I bet they are going to be there on referendum day saying, hey, shake off that hangover and go out and cast your vote. Either that or they're getting to do early postal votes now. What's that?
Here's a bus, get on it.
Yeah, they will do all of the things that are required to actually get them out there and vote. I've no doubt about that, but they're still going to lose. Okay. All right, last story on The Voice. This one barely got a mention, actually, but it's quite significant. And we're going to give Clive Palmer a bit of credit here, which we don't do very often. So Clive Palmer actually took the Electoral Commission to court over what exactly was marked on the ballot paper would be recorded as. So what do I mean by that? If you write a yes, obviously that's recorded as a yes vote. If you write no, that's recorded as a no vote. Pretty simple. Okay, what if you just put a tick in the box instead of writing yes? If you put a tick in the box, that will be recorded as a yes vote as well. But what will happen if you put an X in the box? It'll be thrown out. It won't be recorded as a no vote. Now, you would expect that just as no is the opposite of yes, that a cross would be the opposite of a tick. Not according to the Electoral Commission. If you put an X in there, that will be an invalid vote and it'll count for nothing. But if you put a tick, it's a yes vote. Now, tell me that isn't a form of bias. And here's their reason, by the way, the AEC. They said that a cross or an X is not universally recognized as a negative symbol, like signifying the negative. But a tick is recognized as a universal, like, affirmative symbol. This seems really, really stupid to me. You either have one or the other, okay? If an X is not counted, then a tick shouldn't be counted either. So this is blatant deep state bias. This is an absolute blatant example of it. And yeah, Palmer actually used his money to try and fight against that, but he lost. That's like one of the cases I wish Palmer had actually won.
Yeah, one of the cases where money doesn't talk, unfortunately.
Right, yeah.
You go hard up against state interests. There we go. Your money is fucking worthless here, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now... Oh, wait, no, sorry. I tell a lie. One last story on The Voice. So, in Queensland, they're currently apparently going through this stage where a record amount of cultural artifacts are being returned to state authorities. And these are Aboriginal cultural artifacts. For example, they had one handed back that was a grinding stone. So, not that this would be a good tactic either, but the Queensland government is saying that if the yes vote gets through, we're going to have more examples of people returning these priceless artifacts.
What?
Basically, yeah, I know. Here's what they basically said. They were like, this will make people feel good about it. They said this person who returned a grinding stone apparently felt so good that she had returned it to be commemorated as that of the First Nations people and belonging to them. And if we get a yes vote, we'll get more heartwarming stories of stuff like that happening. So yeah.
I love we've got an entire fucking industry that is dedicated to making up bullshit.
We do. And it's all going to be a spectacular failure as well. All of this is going to be for nothing. All right, so we'll move on to climate and energy. So we've got a lot of, there's another bloody climate change conference going on at the UN headquarters in New York at the moment. You might have seen Penny Wong did a speech there. And so when we have these events, we always have targets. And what they're talking about now is the importance of targets for 2030. Now, as we know, some radical groups actually want net zero by 2030, not by 2050. That is the target that the Greens have, for example. But you also break it down on a state and territory level. And what are the Greens complaining about now? Well, it's that Western Australia is the only state in the country that does not have a 2030 goal. The earliest we've got is a target for 2030, and that target hasn't been set yet. Good. So what? Is not shutting down our entire coal industry good enough for you? We still need all of these short-term targets to go with the long-term targets that we already have?
Not really, actually. I think, after the coal, we should just start seeing if we can sacrifice infants and etc. I think Moloch hasn't really got its due.
No. It's never good enough. And, it just shows how, these are sort of rules for radical stuff where the left is never satisfied. And remember, as Blair Cottrell said, it's not a destination, it's a journey. You never get there. You will always be bled dry.
Oh, it wasn't Blair. Oh, yeah, it wasn't Blair. It was the dude that he fucking cornered on live television. Can't remember the name of that Jewish doctor.
Oh, right. But I mean, that was the answer that Blair wanted, though.
Yeah.
Directly admit, there is no,
history doesn't end. It ends for you, but history doesn't end.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if you ask me, this is that's what it means to be a progressive. Why do they call themselves progressive? It's just a fetish for anything new. and you have to always reform. And one of the reasons you need to always reform is because if you ignore reality, and in this case, if you ignore the reality of race, you're never actually going to close the gap between Aboriginal and European Australians, because this is at a genetic level. And if you deny race, that means you just have to keep trying new things over and over and over and over again. And this is just the latest iteration of that.
Yep. No, it's one of the things you run into. It's like calling a demon by its true name. It's like to the conservative, it's the question, what did you conserve? And for the progressive, it's what are you progressing towards?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. All right. So Chris Bowen put out figures where this was to estimate the cost of basically converting coal-fired power stations into nuclear stations.
Yep.
Now, Chris Bowen, I only just saw this very briefly because I don't watch Q&A anymore. But, some conservatives are saying that Chris Bowen was owned by like a 17-year-old on the panel. I don't know if you saw that. It's some kid. And look, I'm not... I should have looked this up further, but what it looked like to me, I might be wrong here, is that he's one of the guys who is all for action on climate change, but he wants to go the nuclear route. And, he thinks that too much investment in green energy is driving up power prices and all that kind of stuff. He's much like Bjorn Lomborg, that Danish climate scientist, who supports these more sensible transition methods. And yeah, a lot of people said that he sort of owned Chris Bowen, and he even had a bloody prop where he had like Australia's commitment to climate change, and he took it out and he scrunched it up and threw it away. So it looks like Chris Bowen has sort of responded to this. And he's saying that cost would be of getting those nuclear plants running in place of coal-fired plants to be $387 billion. Okay.
Yeah, how many times are you going to have to cycle over that fucking, that solar station over the course of 10 years? How many fucking times do you need to replace all the lithium and the fucking batteries that you'll need to put together for green energy, etc.? Shut the fuck up. There's a big difference between like a upfront and then an upfront cost and then a contiguous cost.
Right. I mean, look, I was going to say that I'm sure these numbers are exaggerated anyway.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that's the point that we've made many times over, is that the maintenance costs are never factored in to these estimates. And yes, if you were to construct a coal-fired station versus a nuclear station, yes, nuclear station would cost more. But how much money does it save in the long term when it's operational? A lot more.
It's what in engineering we call cradle to grave. So like a cradle to grave analysis is like the projected cost of an installation over its projected lifespan. So like, okay, so cradle part is like building it and etc. Lifespan is nominal running costs, and then grave is disposing of it. The cradle to grave on a nuclear reactor is fucking minuscule. And when I say minuscule, I'm not fucking over exaggerating. I'm talking about less than 1% than, say, the equivalent energy output of a solar field or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and well, also I would also ask, what about the maintenance costs on solar? What do you call them? Like those massive solar panel stations.
Just call them there's a lot of words for it. Just call them installations. People don't forget. Yeah. People don't fucking understand that a solar panel is a consumable. They're not forever, buddy. UV damages them like UV damages everything else. Weather damages them like weather damages anything else. It is a consumable. They have to be replaced, and their lifespan is generally about retail grade. They're pretty high up, about 12 years, but like industrial, it's only about 5 or 6.
Yeah. And what about wind turbines and hydro and everything? Like, okay, Bowen, how about, so long as you're not cooking the books, why don't you put estimates out talking about the long-term costs of all these various projects? Nuclear versus coal fire versus hydro versus wind.
I'll stand up for hydro, but only with the caveat that hydro is very, very situational. You have to have the exact environmental condition or topographic conditions and geological conditions to do hydro. That's why, like, if you actually look at prevalence of power stations, you look at prevalence of hydro, like you find them in Nevada, you find them in Snowy Mountain, you find them in the mountainous parts of Germany, and then some parts of France, and then you find them on the Yangtze in China. You have to have very specific. Oop, I just had myself back. You have to have very specific conditions for hydroelectric to work. The only reason why hydroelectric is kind of like one of the exceptions I give is because hydroelectric is a throttleable power source.
Yeah, right. And that's why we never ever get these estimates out there on projecting long-term costs. It's always just, okay, how much does it cost to build? And also, I might add, like, how much is it costing to, say, put all of those power lines through regional Victoria at the moment to fund various green energy projects? Like, the cost in terms of a transition to green energy has never been cited as a reason not to do it.
The material cost is immense. Yeah. So I rolled out some numbers last time. I actually got kind of corrected and updated. I was lying with an agenda because it turns out I was underplaying it. So it's about 50 times the amount of copper, 15 times the amount of nickel. Lithium, it's not times. It's like something like several megatons of lithium, which that lithium has a 5-year lifespan, and then 32 times the amount of nickel. That's just metals. I'm not talking about insulation, plastic, glass, isolators, etc. Like just the metal cost is fucking horrendous.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the Murdoch media quickly. So Rupert Murdoch has announced his retirement from News Corp. Of course, this is the international media empire that is responsible for such outfits as Fox and Fox News, the Australian newspaper, a lot of Australia's print media, which, is not really print media anymore. It's all online. And he's just like, in terms of media figures, he's probably the biggest enemy of the left. I'd have to say.
They complain about him a lot.
They do all the time.
I guess he's just going to get his shipment of adrenochrome this quarter, and so Lachlan has to take over.
Yeah, so Lachlan Murdoch is the one taking over now. And he's said to be, and I don't know this because this is, the media that tends to hate News Corp are the ones saying this, but they're the ones reporting that Lachlan Murdoch is actually even more conservative than his dad. Now, I don't know.
He's like a Ben Shapiro-ite.
Yeah, I mean, I did hear that, what was it? Lachlan Murdoch, what was that conspiracy? Oh, man, I forget what it was now.
A conspiracy relating to the Murdochs. We need to narrow it down.
No, it was something to do with, oh, that's right. Tucker Carlson. He wanted, the rumor was, because, they got rid of Tucker Carlson eventually. But the rumor was that he wanted to replace Tucker Carlson with Ben Shapiro. That was the theory that was going around.
Yeah. No, that probably would have been, if he had his way, that would have been the case. He loves Ben Shapiro. He loves him some individualism, ineffectual conservatism.
Yeah. And I mean, Ben Shapiro is worshipped by American right wingers.
He's Jewish.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any doubt that if he wasn't Jewish, and didn't wear his Jewishness on his sleeve like he does, it's kind of hard not to when you sound like that, it would be a lot like if Milo wasn't gay. They need that kind of shtick to prop themselves up.
Yeah.
Granted, Ben Shapiro, he's still a smart guy. I'm certainly not going to say he's not talented or anything. Of course, he's a well-read, smart guy. But he has that to thank for so much of his success.
Yeah.
And I mean, could you just imagine watching Fox News with that whiny fucking voice? Like, that would just irritate the shit out.
Fucking Jesus. No, if it wasn't for the only thing that stopped him. If it wasn't for Ben Shapiro's Jewishness, he would be some like whiny PNG tuber, complaining about fucking fairies on YouTube with like 20 views.
Right. Yeah.
And actually, I've heard better fucking, analysis of situations from those people. So I'm not even sure about that.
Yeah. Now, the other bit of news regarding this, like, what's the Australian connection? Well, I mean, like I said before, a lot of the print media is owned by Murdoch over here.
Yep.
Sky News is owned by News Corp.
Yep.
I believe, yeah, they are. Yep.
And if you want to put fucking Kevin Rudd's panties in and out, just mention the Murdoch media.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or fucking Jordan Shanks. If you want to send Jordan Shanks into a tizzy, just mention the Murdoch media.
Yeah. Just don't put his address out there. But what they're doing now is they're getting they've got nominations to join the Fox Corporation's board of directors.
Yep.
Okay, these are the people at the very top of the media empire. And we've got a nomination from Australia, and that is Tony Abbott.
Yeah.
Now...
Oh, and the ABC hated that. Oh my God, if you want to see editorializing on the ABC, just watch their coverage of that move. They were, not happy.
Right. No, definitely not. And Lachlan Murdoch has commented on this. He extended a very warm welcome to Tony Abbott. Also to, Peggy Johnson, who is Australian as well, I believe. Not sure if I heard of her before. But yeah, they've certainly got these public ringing endorsements coming from Lachlan Murdoch. And if he is a big Ben Shapiro fan, then I can't see why he wouldn't be a big Tony Abbott fan. And, a lot of people have said that this is just like sort of a further integration of normie conservatism in Australia with America. We're very much becoming one and the same. I'm seeing it increasingly with Israel as well. I mean, look, John Howard was a big Zionist, of course, as was obviously Malcolm Fraser. He was part Jewish. But you didn't hear about it that much in the public debate, in Parliament or in the media. We're hearing more and more of it now. We got a story on it coming up, regarding the rise in anti-Semitism. And, with all these ridiculous critiques of like Corbynite left-wing anti-Semitism and all this crap.
This is a story all about how my Kippercup flip turned upside down.
Yeah. So, but look, this has been going on in America for decades now, but it's starting in Australia. This integration of just completely American-style neoconservatism is just becoming the normal mainstream conservatism here in Australia. And this is another way of kind of solidifying that, I think. Particularly if you watch Sky News and if you see how similar just all of it is to Fox. They're going for like the infotainment format and all of the same cheap soundbite talking points that Fox News is renowned for. Yeah. It's all just sort of merging into one. All right. So we got a COVID inquiry that has been announced. So this was by the federal government. This is not a royal commission, so it will not have the same powers as a royal commission. It can call witnesses and cross-examine them, but not if they don't want to. Okay, royal commissions can subpoena people. It's lacking a lot of those same powers. Now, here is what the Commonwealth have said are the terms of reference. In other words, what the inquiry can investigate. That is the health measures, including vaccines and other treatments, medical supplies such as PPE and public health messaging, broader health supports for those impacted by the virus and the lockdowns, including mental health and suicide prevention, financial support for individuals. So, when they double job seeker, job keeper as well, we had support for industry and business, like propping them up when they couldn't have any business at all, some of them. Assistance from Australians abroad, including assisted returns to Australia, so expatriation flights, and governance and national governments mechanisms that includes national cabinet, so like the joint meetings of state, territory, and Commonwealth leaders. All right, well, here's what you may have noticed is missing from there. They're not going to be investigating the unilateral decisions that were made by the state and territory governments. Now, when it came to things like lockdowns, like, Mark McGowan at the absolute drop of a hat would announce a 5-day lockdown here in Perth, those decisions were at the state and territory level. Okay? This inquiry is not going to be investigating those. All right? This actually,
it's here to investigate how deep they can actually get their fingers into your asshole.
Yeah, they're going for safe things like, how can we ensure that we're better stocked with vaccines next time or something like that? But when it actually came to like the financial ruin that the states put on many businesses as a result of lockdowns, that's not going to be investigated. And that obviously then means that, you've let someone like Daniel Andrews or Mark McGowan off the hook for all of the different unilateral decisions that they made during that time. And a lot of people were actually surprised that state governments had that kind of power. Lockdowns and vaccine mandates and restrictions to shopping hours and things like that. None of that came from the Commonwealth. That was all your state and territory governments who were doing that.
Oh, and by the way, when we say that, a voice to parliament would be a lesser version if it was legislated by individual states, now trust me, we're still talking about a relatively high-powered body. Just going to put a little note there, just for the audience. Just remember, it's still very shit.
Okay. All right, what do we got now? Oh, right. So, related to COVID and also, related to Australia's national identity, there was a study that came out. This is from the Australian Cohesion Index 2023. Oh, no, sorry, that's the name of the report, but it was put out by the Scanlon Foundation Research Institute.
Oh, Scanlon.
So, one of the things that this found was that since the end of COVID restrictions and everything else that came with it, trust in government and satisfaction with government has increased. Okay? Now, this would have to be the only time that that's happened. All other trends always show...
Objectively or relatively?
Well, that's the thing. If you want to look at a bigger graph of this, you're just talking about how there was this sudden plunge because people were angry about lockdowns and everything from 2020 to 2022 or so. And then naturally, once the economy and everything starts getting going again, and we go to the new normal, as they say, people are a little less pissed off. So if they didn't see some form of improvement, that would be funny. So yeah, it's natural to expect there to be a little bit of recovery in the confidence of government. post-lockdowns. However, let's look at all this other stuff that they found here. So this is going over the past 15 years that I looked at. It said it finds that in 2022, 1 in 2 adults, or 52%, said they have a great sense of belonging in Australia. That is a 20 percentage point decline since 2007. Okay? So we dropped 20 percentage points. That wouldn't have anything to do with immigration, would it?
Oh, surely not. I mean, those two things wouldn't be like spiritually or situationally related, would they? Oh.
No. And look, I couldn't help but think, because I'm reading this from The Australian, that they were trying to kind of just tie this with the overall dissatisfaction with government, trust in government, confidence with government and everything. Like, oh yeah, well look, people aren't going to identify with their nation if they don't trust their government. Well, yes, okay, that's true to an extent. But what about just all the people they see around them? And you know, this wouldn't just be
bowling alone.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure that this decline would have come from like every demographic, you know, because obviously, if you were to take this 20 years ago when we still kind of looked like a white country, white people, of course, would identify very strongly with Australia. And why wouldn't they? Most of the people around them are like themselves. We all talk to each other. We have communities. We have similar interests. And we feel like we are a cohesive whole.
We want to know about buttered sausage and what it's doing in my face.
The more and more non-white we have become, obviously then that means the white population starts to see their environment change around them. They do not relate to the people around them as much as they once did. So they're going to fall out of touch. And look, I feel that way more and more every day. Whenever I go to the shops, I'm like, this doesn't feel like I'm in Australia. This feels like
you're in a Masonic strip mall.
It's like, yeah, I'm in Dubai or something. Like I'm in this multicultural economic zone, and that's it. I don't relate to any of these people around me, and not just because I don't look
somewhere
like
in the heart of Singapore.
Yeah, and then also all of the people who are coming in and making the country less white, they're not going to have a sense of national identity either, because they still relate to their old country, and they don't have a demographic majority here either. We do have a demographic majority, but it's, you know, it's wafer thin and it's reducing all the time.
Fleeting.
So no one, essentially, because we're a hodgepodge of all of these different groups, no one is really going to have a deep fundamental sense of belonging in this country, because there's nothing to belong to. Okay, so going into the specifics of it, it found that among young people who are struggling financially, that figure actually dropped 27 percentage points. So young people don't identify with the country. Now, I'm sure some of them would have been Zoomers who just think the whole idea of identifying with a nation is just a bad idea no matter what. So of course they're going to say, no, I don't identify with it. But a lot of them would be, say, Gen Zyklon people who just say, well, it's like, I want to have pride in my nation, but I can't. How can I when I don't like the people around me? So the report finds that in 2022, just 34% of 18 to 24-year-olds and 31% of 25 to 34-year-olds said they have a great sense of belonging in Australia, compared with 75% of those 65 and over. While this proportion fell across all age groups from 2007 and 2022, the decline was more than 4 times greater for younger adults. No surprises there either. I got to say, I'm a bit surprised that over 65s rated that highly. 75% of them have a great sense of belonging, because even with them,
they live in their own world.
But I mean, a lot of them also would have to, like, say the ones in nursing homes. What about the ones who are, you know, being looked
Out and
after or
about.
being beaten up by a fucking Filipino or something? They can't be relating very much to this new Australia. I
No,
can't
the ones
imagine.
being beaten, having the absolute shit kicked out of them by Filipinos are on so many drugs that they wouldn't even be able to answer such a report.
Maybe that's it. You might be
Yeah.
right there.
No, the ones that like for example, like when I go away from my farm property, when I was looking at houses and etc. I made the same decision that they did, whether they acknowledge it or not. I looked at the fucking neighborhood and I saw just a whole bunch of old English people. And I was just like, well, I guess this is going to be fine for now until they age out and die. Like, but I know I'm going to be safe here. And they've made the same decision too. They go to all these like tiny little niche communities which aren't gated but functionally are. And they live there or they move to Tasmania.
Oh, yeah. You mean like Port Bavard or something?
Yeah, something like that. Like, just live around a whole bunch of like aging Poms and Irish people, and they all congregate together, whether consciously or not.
They do. Man, they're nice places, though. I got to say, like those
They
ones in
are.
Mandurah, and they're quite nice.
Yes. Yeah, no,
But
it's
yeah,
just like
I mean that's why they're effectively gated. They are sort of like shut off
I'm
from
like
what's
the
going on
youngest
around them.
fucking dude on my street by 40 fucking years.
All right. So let's talk about the economy. And well, a couple of weeks ago, I saw that Australia went into per capita recession. I have to say, like, I'm surprised that hadn't happened before, because in terms of living standards and people's wages, we had been in a recession for a long, long time. The very fact that wage increases are not meeting inflation increases shows that and so I would even say that, like, the per capita recession metric is sort of misleading as well, because it only talks about in terms of gross domestic product relative to the population growth. Okay, but that still isn't factoring for cost of living and overall living standards. But anyway, we are in that per capita recession. And we've still only recorded, I believe it was 0.2%. And then they're
Below
saying that
3.
overall, oh, is that what it is? Okay. But now, and I mean, this sounds too generous as well. They're predicting that the global economy is going to grow by 2.7% over the next year, and the Australian economy is projected to increase 1.7%. That sounds too generous as well, I think. I really have to doubt that.
It's like one of those like captain's offices on the ship telling people to like line up calmly while the ship is very, very obviously tilling into the sea.
Right. And I mean, look, the two main challenges that they highlighted here, in a global sense, not just Australia, is interest rates going up. Some countries, they're unbelievably high. And also the fact that China's kind of post-COVID rebound is fizzling out. I think it's also just the fact that China is moving into being a service economy now as well. They're moving away from making those shitty plastic goods that you're used to, because now India and Bangladesh are making them instead. Aren't we lucky? But yeah, this at the same time as when the government is bragging about a surplus. So even though the budget was already put out there like a month ago or whatever, new figures always come in that can change what you have on record. And so now they're saying that the budget is going to be over $22 billion. They're thanking an increase in commodity sales. It also seems to just be like the increase in the prices of commodities as well is increasing companies' profit margins, which in turn is increasing royalties and tax revenue. So, yeah, it's a little better than what they're expecting. But it still doesn't look that good when you've got all these people struggling and you've got the government like seeming to hoard money at the same time.
In the future, we'll define a surplus as a surplus of brown biomass in your country.
Well, yeah. So look, this is actually, it's the first budget surplus that you had since 2007, which was Peter Costello's last budget. And of course, the GFC happened like right after that. And it did include $14.6 billion of what they refer to as targeted relief for people who are struggling with cost of living pressures. And as you know, we've had like some modest increases to the pension, to Job Seeker now, those kind of things.
A couple extra hundred.
So yeah, but I don't think that people are buying this as good economic management by the federal government, no matter how much of a nice face Jim Chalmers wants to put on it. Now, Jim Chalmers has also counter-signaled the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank, well, how do I say this? Like, they think that increased unemployment would actually be a good thing right now. Basically, when you hear like Philip Lowe talking about how we need to keep the pressure of wages, because increased wages means inflationary pressures. They're not just talking about wages. They're just talking generally about workers having money, and that includes just having a job in the first place. So if you have people who are unemployed, they're actually offering some inflationary relief for the economy because they're not out there stimulating the economy and forcing prices to go higher. Some people might find this ridiculous, but yes, these are arguments that economists do actually put out there. And they're saying that they want what they refer to as a technical 4.5% unemployment target. And they want the government to set that as a goal. Now, what is it at the moment? 3.7%, I believe, the unemployment rate?
That's the last I heard. They were kvetching about it on the ABC a little bit ago. But I was going to say, just for the audience, does anyone have a pointy rock? Just for no particular reason, but does anyone have a pointy rock? And can anyone point me to a local economics firm?
A grinding stone.
Yeah, like an Aboriginal artifact. I just want to present them with Aboriginal, Aboriginal culture right there. This artifact, this grinding stone. I want to present it to them in an overhand fashion.
Yeah. So look, we've got the new governor, Michelle Bullock, whose name will never be as infamous as that as Philip Lowe's. But yeah, she said this back in June. She said unemployment will have to rise to 4.5% in order to bring inflation back under control. So there you go. Obviously, unions don't like this. They much prefer the idea of full employment, or as full as you can possibly get. And I mean, I guess everyone likes that idea, don't they? Like anyone who wants a job can get one. That's how John Howard tried to sell work choices, I remember. But look, I don't.
How the fuck did that work?
Yeah, but also, do you see here when you don't talk about immigration, you have to go then and look at other factors that would contribute to inflation. And like I said, that's examples of that include talking about unions pushing for wages to be too high. In this case, someone saying that unemployment is too low. What else is there?
That the beatings will continue until morale improves.
So look, another prominent economist the other day was talking about what was it? Oh God, why haven't
we're at stages of fucking like state capitalism. That like we're basically just like hearing KMFDM fucking song lyrics as like fucking PR pieces. We're at KMFDM capitalism.
I thought I had the link for this. It's not in my prep. I'll just have to go from memory. But I know there was an economist saying that or maybe I'll put it in the housing section. But house prices are not going to come down unless you cut immigration. Now, there's other ways of doing it.
Or make a fuck ton of people homeless.
Right. Well, okay. I mean, let's talk about the like. There's three things basically that you can do to free up housing and make it less expensive for people. One, obviously, is cut immigration. Two is to release more land for development. And three is to use existing land and turn it into more urbanly dense, development. In other words, build apartments where you used to have houses, okay? That's really
They're trying to do two of those. They will never touch the first.
Right. This is what I'm saying. And so every time you ignore the immigration factor, you have to then go and pursue all of these other policy avenues that have very, very bad consequences, okay? And, I have to say it again. I mean, we're turning Australia into just like any other series of American cities where we're all just clumped together as a bunch of unhappy sardines in a can. All right, and that's what we're moving towards. Mark McGowan is now overruling councils in WA to force urban development here.
Yeah, okay. So I love the price margin because you can make a pretty damn big fucking single residence dwelling for a little under 2 million. Anything that is 2 million and above, that's an apartment block. Or the rare instance of a mega millionaire's fucking single residence dwelling. Worked on all of them, by the way. The reason why that's just fucking happening is because councils are the kind of democratic, or meant to be the democratic will of the people living in that area. It's like a fucking homeowners association, but just on a larger scale. That's what we're resorting to. This is your community. Fuck you. Suffer. I'm going to build an apartment block and fill it full of Brigittes, and you can just take it up the ass.
Right. And so now with this debate on employment, we see the exact same thing. People are unwilling to touch the amount of immigration that we have each year in Australia. So then what do? You say, okay, we got to keep wages low and we got to keep unemployment high. That's what you're left with. Okay. One last thing in the economy, and that is that builders here in WA are now essentially begging the state government for bailout packages.
Yep.
Look, I don't know. We might be one of the worst hit, but certainly when I drive around, I'm not really seeing empty construction sites of a large building, like a shopping center or something. But I'm seeing all of these empty houses where you see the timber and a little bit of brickwork, and you never see anyone working there. They're just abandoned a lot of the time because the company has gone bust during the construction of that house. You are seeing it everywhere now. So who was this? The building group director, Damien, Jesus, how the hell do you say that name? DeCenzo, basically said that, that if we don't have relief packages, in other words, bailouts, right, giving them enough money so that they can just keep the business afloat, that the construction industry is essentially going to die in WA, and it's going to contribute more to an actual recession, a technical recession, not just a per capita recession, but a real one. That's what you're going to see.
Here's a word to the audience.
The ultimate barometer of the economy.
Yes, it is. Here's a word to the audience. If you want to know if a site's abandoned, look for little posters saying "Oh, this site is being surveilled," or guard dogs on site. Both of them are empty promises, by the way. But that's the tell. That's how you figure out if a place is completely abandoned. But a lot of construction companies, they get to the point where they quite literally can't pay the next contractor for the next stage of the job because they don't have the capital. They can't get the loan. They can't do anything. They can't get an advance from the client because the client doesn't even have money. They go to court, and then the building company just has to disappear.
Right. And that's what we're left with.
I've seen equipment from 3 different building companies that I personally know have went under. They're still up. But they don't have an owner anymore.
Right. Yeah, well, that would explain why we keep seeing all of these empty ones. There's a site near my house where like they did the demolition, and then nothing happened. That's it. They haven't even laid the concrete slabs or anything on it. It's just like nothing happened. All they did was a demolition. So it's kind of scary when you see that, you know. It doesn't like look like a frightening sight, but it should in terms of what it means down the track.
Yeah, what it means fucking societally.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's go to state politics now. And we've got some results that came from the state intervention, the Commonwealth intervention into the state Labor Party in Victoria. Now, this occurred as a result of the rampant, blatant branch stacking, you know, actual real branch stacking where like you actually pay the membership dues of people who didn't even want to be members of the party in the first place. That's what Adam Somyurek was doing. So the running of the whole like how do you say it? I don't know, say factional system, but you know, the internal machinery of the Labor Party was essentially handed over to the Commonwealth, to the federal Labor Party, and you had former Premier Stephen Bracks and former Commonwealth Minister Jenny Macklin in charge of it. Now, part of this was it was also their job to investigate how all of this happened. How is it that Adam Somyurek was able to rise to this level of power within the party and, you know, kind of get this operation running for so many years without people even really noticing until 60 Minutes got on his back? And part of what they found here was, well, I'll read this directly from the Australian. It said, almost 4 in 5 members signed up to the party by Labor's Socialist Left faction in key southeastern Melbourne federal electorate in the year March 2020 did not survive a membership audit. So a membership audit is part of what Jenny Macklin and Stephen Bracks were doing. This essentially meant, did you join the Labor Party out of your own volition and free will for a reasonable purpose? You know, did you just want to be a member of the Labor Party because you support them, and you also decided to join a particular branch and a particular faction of the Labor Party, again, because you support them? Well, this inquiry or this audit basically found that 4 in 5 members of the Socialist Left faction in this electorate did not. Okay. Now, this does not necessarily mean that you had figures like Adam Somyurek or whatever paying their membership dues, but it did find that the reason why they were added to this particular electorate in this particular faction, that is the Socialist Left faction, was to assist the Socialist Left candidate get pre-selection, because, you know, that's how it works. The membership in an electorate has a 50% say on who gets pre-selection for that seat or that electorate. Yeah, so if you control the party membership, you can control who the candidate is, ultimately.
We kind of breaking news. I just got someone knocked at my door and tried to hand me pamphlets to vote yes in like several languages. And I was like, who the fuck are you guys? Also, like, oh, I'm being polite. Who are you guys with? Yes, 23. So that's why I was gone there for a little bit. I just got a fucking door knock from Yes 23. Oh my fucking god! Okay. Kill me! Kill me!
I didn't even notice. I just kept talking as you were gone. But what was I saying? Okay, yeah. So look, now worth pointing out here, the Socialist Left faction is not Adam Somyurek's faction. His faction is known as the Mods, which of course just means moderate or in the center. But let's actually have a look at the communities, as they're described here, who were signed up en masse to the socialist left as a counterweight or an opposition to Adam Somirak's mods. They came from the Sikh, Sri Lankan, Serbian, Turkish, and Lebanese communities. They were actively targeted to be recruited to the socialist left faction in that electorate and many other electorates as well. So this was ethnic branch stacking too. This is a case where they say, okay, oh, you're from the Indian community? Oh, well, did you know that Daniel Andrews is very generous and gives out grants in the tens of thousands of dollars to Indian community centers? Did you know that? Maybe you should join. And while you're there, you can, say, secure a meeting with your local representative for more funding. Or better still, we might actually run an Indian candidate, which they've done. Okay, this is how ethnic branch stacking works. And Adam Somirak was the one who started it. If I remember correctly, it was obviously mainly Turkish because he's of Turkish background himself. But it was Indians and it was Vietnamese.
Well, for starters, he's Turkish.
Yeah. I remember Mehdi and I covered this one at the time. It was so blatant, actually. And we actually read out some quotes from this Lebanese woman who was aligned with Adam Somirak, talking about how there were too many white people in the Victorian Labor Party, and they wanted to change that.
I still remember that. That was a really good show.
That was one of my favorite ones, actually, just because of how much shit I was able to find.
I knew about the Grey Wolves. I didn't know they did fucking hits in Australia.
Right, yeah, and then there was also the connection of the Grey Wolves, which is basically like a Turkish nationalist group who they hate the Greeks, because of Cyprus and all of that. And Adam Somirak, was linked to them. But also, it's just ethnic branch stacking isn't always necessarily just your ethnic group that you're trying to promote the interests of. It's also like, okay, if I can get one Indian person to sign up, well, that means he could sign up his family, and he can sign up his extended family, and he can sign up the people who go to his temple. Why? Because they have strong ethnic networks. White people don't. So ethnic branch stacking for white people is not going to have that same effect. You can't sign up a white person and say, oh, okay, now sign up everyone in your family and everyone at your sporting club or whatever. It doesn't work like that.
They're not going to. They're too atomized.
Right. Yes. But when you have groups with tight social cohesion, such as Indians who live in Australia, you can do that.
Indians, the open sewer network.
Yeah. But that it's a great way of just suddenly getting a big influx of people and then saying, hey, all right, you know who the candidate is that represents Indians? It's this guy. So you turn up to those party meetings and you vote for them, and we'll get that candidate in for you. So that is an alarming number. That meant that, basically 80% of the people in this electorate, this is the electorate of Bruce, by the way, in Victoria, it found that 80% of them weren't genuine, that they didn't sign up for the group just because they wanted to or whatever. It was because they were encouraged to for the purposes of ethnic branch stacking. So there you go. It's still happening over there.
Gotta love it. Gotta enjoy it. If you want to see a vision of your future, this is it.
Right. Oh, yes. Now, one of them, this is not for the seat of Bruce, but this is to do with a guy who's really popular. A lot of people kind of see him as the unofficial leader of the Indian community in Victoria. His name is Lovedeep Singh Kark. Probably saying it wrong. But anyway, this is a guy who
got that love and deep when you're seeing cock.
He owns a smash repair operator in Victoria, and he's also a huge promoter of this Indian sport called kabaddi. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Nope.
I'd never heard of it before either, and I read that it is like a cross between rugby and wrestling that doesn't involve a ball. I don't know what the hell that looks like.
contact sport between. Oh Jesus fucking Christ! It looks like a fucking, if it's possible, a gayer version of Greco wrestling.
Yeah, they said it had like traditional wrestling elements in it. I don't know. I'd never heard of it before. But anyway, apparently it's really popular with Indians. But anyway, he was invited into the party. Like, he's a donor as well, of course. He's got a lot of money, by the Andrews government minister, Lily D'Ambrosio, I think. And ever since he joined, all of a sudden, you are noticing these huge influxes of Indians signed up to the Labor Party. If this was happening on the scale that it is in Adelaide, in South Australia, except it wasn't Indians, it was right-to-life Christians, these people would be expelled from the party instantly.
And they have.
We've
covered this.
So, we have. And in that case, it was only like 100 new members or something. And this was across various electorates, okay? Not like a single one. And yeah, the South Australian Liberal Party deemed it to be religious branch stacking and had them expelled. Is Daniel Andrews having any of these Indians expelled because this is blatant ethnic branch stacking? No.
I love filling my country full of administrator race.
Oh my God. So yeah, no end of that insight for Victoria. Now,
oh, by the way, if you come to listen to the show because you want to be cheered up, you've come to the wrong place. We never do that. We'll never make you happy. All we'll do is make you sad and angry.
Oh no, never come here for any white pills. You're not going to get them.
This is the wrong place.
Okay, I'm going to have to watch like a Kabaddi video later just to see what the hell this is. Like,
it's rugby plus. It is rugby plus wrestling. That's what it is. I was just like looking at some tabs on the side.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, just quickly on ICAC.
Open skirmish in Virginia.
Like we as we know, like obviously the investigation wrapped up a couple of months ago. It did not recommend any criminal charges be laid against Gladys Berejiklian. I don't think it even did with Daryl Maguire. However, I would certainly argue that New South Wales Police would have enough material to go on for criminal charges to be laid against him. But anyway, Gladys Berejiklian has launched an appeal in the New South Wales Court of Appeal, which is the highest civil court in the state. Now, this, of course, is to just sort of fight reputational damage here. She's not asking for compensation, but the fact that ICAC found that she engaged in serious corrupt conduct is obviously a blight on your record. She wants to go there to kind of clear her name. And yeah, they do have the power to do that, to kind of come out and have an official ruling and say, no, these findings were false. As to whether or not that can truly repair your reputation, that's another question. And that's also why people seek financial compensation, because usually it's found that, your reputation is irreparable, and that's why you deserve to get money for that, to compensate you for it. But anyway, we'll see how that turns out. All right, so industrial relations. Ingham Chicken, which is obviously a poultry provider to many fast food joints and shopping centres around the world, around Australia. Their staff went on strike.
Their parent companies around the world.
Oh, okay. But yeah, they went on strike in Perth and Adelaide there. So, usual thing, they want wage increases that at least somewhat approximate the cost of living increases. You're never going to get that, guys. Like, you'll be lucky if you get 3.5%, even though inflation's around 7 or 8.
I saw those strikes, buddy. Most of you people were white. I trust you do a good job, but a little bit of detritus in your chicken, that's just going to have to happen, because you guys are going to be replaced by jungle Asians. at best.
Yeah, I mean, look, I saw some of the photos though, and I still saw like what looked like a lot of jungle Asians. Yeah, I assume you mean Southeast Asian, like Indonesian types.
Ones that live in the jungle.
Well, yeah,
They're all the same
did
race
see
to me.
quite a few. They're basically all Indonesian. Like even the Malays, like the brown Malays, even they come from Indonesia originally.
Yeah.
They're not native to Malaysia, even though they basically carry on like they are. They're not native to Malaysia. Anyway, that's another story.
That's a tidbit for another time.
Yeah. So look, they said, I mean, we're doing this on a Sunday now, long weekend. We got to celebrate Charles's birthday. They said that the strike was going to continue into the long weekend, and if it goes long enough, this is what Ingham Chicken was saying anyway, that it will affect supply chains in Perth and Adelaide. I've got plenty of chicken in my freezer right now, so I guess I don't have to worry about that too much. But yeah, it's another example of industrial unrest resurfacing in Australia, because we really had not seen, geez, man, like not much at all since like the waterfront days in the late 90s.
The group should rename their song Vision 2023.
Maybe they should.
No one's gonna get that in the fucking audience, but yeah, it was a song about like discontent and riots and etc. Yeah, like yeah, they fucking called it a little bit too early, in my opinion.
Maybe, but they were trying to do the double entendre of 2020 vision, to go with the song. So it wasn't so much a prediction as it was just a convenient title,
The gem middle bit brings out the autism and the Finian.
Okay, whatever. I do like dyke groups. They're good, even though I can't understand them most of the time. Okay, so one of the big things that I guess happened while we were on hiatus was the court ruling against Qantas. That was when they essentially sacked 1,700 crew staff so that they could hire foreign workers, or just not replace any of them in the first place. As we know, Qantas has been doing this gradual process of outsourcing their workforce again and again and again. And yeah, they actually had a decision made against them, finding that these 1,700 employees were unfairly sacked and therefore had to be compensated. Some of them have gotten their jobs back, everything like that. So
I do like this kind of justice. I think it's done well. I like that they have froze the CEO's wages and bonuses, etc. I still feel it lacking. I think we would need a more Sino kind of justice when it comes to corporate corruption, which is summary execution.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Well, Jesus, man. Talking about Alan Joyce, who, as we know, is on the way out. The figures have just been released as to his, what they refer to as his remuneration package. This is what we usually call a golden handshake. Means, okay, can you leave and we'll give you a shitload of money as you leave. $21.4
Here's
million.
$20 to fuck off.
He got $24.1 million. That was his golden handshake. Holy shit, man. Does that cunt not have enough money already?
I'll call it a golden shower, but that terminology has already been taken up by something else.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure a golden shower is not foreign to Alan Joyce. He can go back to Dublin and get freaky with Leo Varadkar, the fucking gay Indian who rules over Ireland. But yeah, I mean, it was like, all right, on the one hand, yes, I'm glad this happened. And, one thing I like about the airline unions is that it is actually this, alliance between everyday, cabin crew, baggage handlers, that kind of thing. And actually, people on the upper end, like pilots and engineers as well.
Yeah.
They actually they work together. They're one of the very few unions that is a transport workers union where you sort of have this class cooperation between them. That's something that's really missing in other sectors of the economy.
It's special. It basically, like, when it comes down to it, like, engineers want to keep the baggage handlers in line because the baggage handlers can do untold damage to a plane. The cabin crew and the pilots want the plane to work correctly, so they work with the engineers. So it's like a boomerang of relations in that industry. It's unique,
yeah, sure.
And unfortunately, It is unique.
It is, of course. And I mean, yeah, and then on the other hand, if you look at like a construction site, you're not going to have that boomerang of interest as you put it. No, on a construction site the interests are conflicting. It's the complete opposite. Yeah, so it's occurred in that way, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just glad there's like one area of the economy where where that's there, and it's that one area where you will see like upper middle class people walk off the job with working class people. It's like pretty much the only place that you'll see that happen. But then, yeah, on the other hand, he gets this enormous fucking cash payment on the way out. Like, oh my God. Anyway, let's move off that. Oh yeah, so it looks like Qantas got its way further. I don't know, I'm torn on this one. Where they're refusing Qatar Airways to have increased access to the Australian market. Now, the reason why I say I'm torn on this is because, of course, being an Australian nationalist, I'm also a protectionist. I want to protect Australian industries, but it's like I hate Qantas for reasons we've just kind of gone through, and
you have to stop
just how Australian Qantas is. Like, even if the majority shareholder, like ownership of the company is quote Australian unquote, I really have to question just how Australian Qantas is.
I'm not going to care for a company unless it's like, say in a perfect world, saying like my perfect vision of the world. I have a nation, etc. I'm not going to care about a fucking corporate body getting its shit kicked in. I'm only going to care about like a state body getting its shit kicked in. Qantas deserves it. No, seriously, get fucked. Thrown to the coals. Like, you are not a part of my interests. You're not a part of my protection.
Yeah, and like how would I say? Oh yeah, like the Uber thing. Like now, obviously, I have a lot of problems with Uber, but in WA, we needed Uber at least initially because we just had a monopoly taxi services, Swan taxis, who would absolutely take the piss. You'd call for a taxi and they wouldn't turn up, shit like that. I'll never forget, years ago, I called them to get a maxi taxi, like multiple seats. It was like someone's birthday party or something. I ordered it. We're waiting around. We waited like 40 minutes. It's not there. So I'm like, what's going on? I called them back. And then they said, oh, if we haven't found you one in 20 minutes, we automatically cancel the order. I'm like, okay, why didn't you tell me that before? We were sitting here thinking that the fucking thing was turning up. The Swan taxis now don't do anything like that anymore because they've got competition.
They got a kick in the ass.
Yeah, and, Qantas needs a kick in the ass too. Big time. Not just in terms of like how they treat their workers, but how they treat their consumers. And, this at least would provide that little bit of competition. And like, sometimes you don't want that extra bit of competition if it's protecting an Australian industry. But as we just said, how much of an Australian company is Qantas right now? So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe letting more Qatar flights operate in Australia would have been a good thing.
The thing is that there's corporate bodies with a C and there's corporate bodies with a K. We haven't seen a corporate body with a K since 1945.
Well, one of the other arguments they were using against Qatar Airways was the fact that woman was strip searched. Do you remember that?
Nope.
She was deemed to be like...
That was sodomized in Philadelphia. Like, the TSA did that.
Well, it was like she was taken aside. I mean, God knows why they chose her. But yeah, they said that like as a like security precaution, they needed a searcher, and that included a strip search, which you're not supposed to have airline staff do that, obviously. If you do have those concerns, then you get the police involved, and then they have to get permission to be able to do something as invasive as that. But yeah, I can't see how Qatar would be doing that again. I don't think they would dare do something like that again. All right. So
not the best instrument, but like an instrument for an ass kicking. Anyway.
All right. Well, last IR story, and that is, well, what a surprise! We've got even more of a teacher shortage. This is here in WA. We've got it all over the country, but in WA as well. So we had new data tabled in the WA Parliament. It shows the number of teachers resigning has increased substantially in recent years, from just over 600 in 2020 to more than 1,200 last year, 2022, that is. So yeah, only in 2 years, you had the rate and number of teachers doubling who quit. That's huge.
Well, yeah, you see they fucking like they basically deputized a whole bunch of like students halfway through their courses.
Yeah, and also they're encouraged, particularly with Aboriginal students, not to suspend them or expel them, right? They want alternative measures. And even if you just give these kids detention after detention, they don't turn up, and they just keep causing a lot of trouble. And the only way then to effectively deal with them is actually just kick them out of the school. We know that teachers are under increased pressure all the time to not take that course of action, or at least not against Aboriginals. So there's that. I think it's also like it's woke curricula as well. That's also one of the reasons why we have barely any males who teach in primary and high schools now.
Yep.
It's completely female dominated. It never used to be like that. There was a time where even primary school education was dominated by men. Not anymore.
Nope.
So yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of reasons for it.
I love male teachers. I love male teachers. Solely for one experience I had back in the day in my science class was it was during like a chemistry lesson, and the male teacher, he points to the fire extinguishers, is like, "Oh right, look at that thing right there. That is the only thing I trust in the entire room. I'm going to be watching all of you."
Yeah. Yeah, so the teachers' union, they're not being very specific here, but they are reporting an increase in levels of stress and anxiety from their membership. Yeah, no shit. It's only going to get worse as well. Oh, yeah, and that's it. And WA is also on track to lose a further 1,500 teachers to resignations for 2023. So it's increasing even more this year.
There's huge. A fucking slogan for us. The race is war and everything. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah. I do. There's a tagline at the moment I did put on the website.
The race was struggling for
decency.
Oh, struggling for decency in age of degeneracy, yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I did that is because the Chasers' like original slogan was striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. I was just kind of back then everything we did we were just trying to parody the Chaser in a way. But no, that line you came up with is probably better.
The races weren't everything. It's only going to get worse.
Yes, indeed.
Abandon all ye hope who enter these gates.
Okay, on to housing. We've got the Victorian government that has released their housing statement, which is a 10-year plan for the industry. It's mainly been focused on increasing the housing stock with the aim of making renting and buying more affordable. Okay, there's been an emphasis on social housing here. I don't know, this is just to kind of keep the Greens happy.
Happy, yeah.
But, the Greens, surprisingly have sort of latched on to housing and rent prices as sort of their flagship economic zone, I guess.
They've shitted up so many other causes that this is the only one that they have left in their Rolodex of causes that would actually make people happy to a degree.
Yeah, or maybe they're also just trying to, because they often get criticized for simply talking about social and environmental issues without talking about economics, because the original Green Party, issues. Yeah, because they were often referred to as like watermelons at the beginning, but they did morph into becoming more of a sort of standard neoliberal Western party.
They should have just stuck to forestry, to be honest.
Yeah, so, in a way, they're sort of trying to recreate their image, I guess, a little bit by talking about rent so often. But anyway, they have put forward targets, where they're saying that, house prices, rent prices are going to go down. But none of this, obviously, relates to immigration. This is a state government plan, so even if they wanted it to deal with immigration, they couldn't. They don't have control over that. But also, it's just, what I was complaining about before. It's just increased urban density and increased social housing. Social housing is just, they're not going to build social housing on the outskirts of Melbourne, okay? It's going to be within the metropolitan zone, okay? It just doesn't work like that. So this is also, by the way, in the fastest growing city in Australia. Some project that in only a few years' time, the population in Melbourne is going to be bigger than that of Sydney. And, the state of Victoria generally gets a higher level of immigration to it. It's growing very, very quickly. So, yeah, you need to do something very, very quick about that. And of course, it's just basically increased urban density. That's the way they're going for it, which includes increase in those government houses where you get a whole lot of crime and drugs going on.
Gotta love it. I love me some good old-fashioned projects.
Right. Now, when we went through Labor's migration strategy a few months ago, I think back in April where this was released, it came from the Department of Home Affairs, so Claire O'Neill is the relevant minister here. This was just basically about how there was going to be a new visa scheme, but it had nothing there to do with overall cuts to migration. Now, they already abolished effectively anyway the decrease to permanent migration in Australia.
Yeah.
The Morrison government, cut that by 30,000. Labor has brought it back. And not only that, but we've been handing out more temporary visas than usual. And she is saying that, yes, still, they are not linking the issue of housing and shortage of housing to the increase in population growth in Australia. So they're not revising.
Damn.
I know, no surprises there. But you'd think further down the track when we've got everyone very concerned about housing and cost of living, that they're still not factoring immigration into that. So like I said before, then what do you got to do? You got to focus on things like
land releases. Oh, it's these corporations doing land releases. It's the
minimum wage being too high.
It's the ethereal concept of all these property companies just not releasing enough land. Fuck off.
Yeah,
it's hard to look at these people bold-faced and think they're not lying without realizing, or without the actual understanding that these people are fucking demons.
Right. Okay. Oh, yeah. And this is the story actually where there was this economist who made statements on all of this. So this is the AMP chief economist Shane Oliver. Now, he said that, I don't like this part of it, but he said the best way of increasing housing supply, decreasing costs of housing is to increase the housing supply. So he's talking about freeing up land. But he said as rental vacancies drop to record lows and property prices reignite, the debate about how immigration contributes to this issue is often lacking, he said. Much of the focus has been on grants and other means to make it easier for first home buyers to get a loan or on rent subsidies. But of course, that just boosts demand, making affordability worse. Okay? Yeah, that's kind of like what we said about rent controls as well. So he went on to say, in recent times, there seems to be more recognition of constraints on the supply side, but surging immigration levels could easily overwhelm these efforts and lead to an even worse situation. Okay, so you've even got the AMP chief economist telling you that, Claire O'Neill. But you're saying you will not revise Australia's projected population growth.
Oh, well, thank you for this fucking contradicting point that vindicates all of my preconceptions about you.
Okay, so the related topic of foreign workers. We've got a leaked government discussion paper. This was obtained by The Australian. Again, this relates to Claire O'Neill and the Department of Home Affairs. It said that this migration shake-up will provide permanent residency pathways to up to 2.1 million temporary visa holders. Now, remember, they already made it easier for New Zealand citizens to become Australian citizens without even having to become permanent residents of Australia. So in other words, you can move from a temporary visa to citizenship in one go. But now they're making it for everyone else. If you're here on on a temporary visa, we will make it easier for you to get yourself onto a permanent visa, like a partner visa or something. Now, what else is in here, though, this shake-up, is proposed worker protection reforms. Now, that includes a new short-term visa option that allows temporary migrant workers to, this is a quote from the paper, make a claim for unpaid wages or entitlements or support an investigation, and the potential for migrants to attend briefings provided by a relevant union. Okay, so they're trying to crack down on foreign worker exploitation here. Give them protections of unions, give them some statutory rights, and make them less afraid to go up against their employer and say, hey, you ripped me off, you didn't pay me enough, things like that. The new temporary school mobility visa is being considered by the government to move away from a single employer sponsorship to a model that allows for mobility between approved employers. This visa would include settings that make it simpler to leave your employer, provide longer visa validity periods, and simplify visa application requirements. Okay, now, how does that relate to worker exploitation? Well, because if you actually quit one employer, under the current system, you've quit your sponsor. You don't have a sponsor anymore either. What this would allow you to do is actually go and find a job elsewhere so you can get another sponsor. Now, who doesn't like this? The business lobby don't like it. So what they're saying here is that, well, one thing, and this is totally bogus. I mean, what the hell do they care about this? They said that might encourage a lot of migrants who live in regional areas to suddenly want to move to the city because they'll get an exemption. If they have a bad experience with a sponsor in a regional area, then a concession can be made for them to then move to an employer in a city, right? Okay, there might be a small element of that, but obviously what they're really afraid of is that they don't have they have less of an upper hand in the negotiations now. They can leave. They can say, okay, you're not paying me enough. I don't like this job. I'm going to leave and get another employer. And I can do that because they can then become my sponsor.
Saying under this system is now a revolutionary act.
Yeah. The employer wants to be able to have that hanging over your head, saying, well, if you report me or if you want to leave, well, that's it. You've lost your sponsorship and you're on the boat back home. This system would make it harder for them to do that. Again, this is a secondary solution. They're not getting to the crux of the issue, which is simply immigration and letting these people in. You want to talk about how employers take advantage of them. It's very simple. Employers will always do that. That's called capitalism. What you actually need to do is block off their supply to these labor sources in the first place. That's the only way you can effectively do it, instead of just tinkering around the legislative edges here, which is what they're doing again in an attempt to cut it out. Okay, that story on defense, sorry, that is boring. I'm going to move on to crime. We got two kind of feminist-related stories, I guess, here. So the first is
feminism and crime? I've never seen that before.
No, I haven't heard of the attack of the Killer Dykes. So the Northern Territory, apparently, not very well, this is true, is the last jurisdiction in the country where it is illegal to release the name of someone accused of rape or sexual assault before the trial. So their identity is still protected. So, of course, these victim survivor groups, or whatever the hell they call them now, are saying that these are archaic laws that should be immediately abolished in the Northern Territory. Now, I have no sympathy for rapists or people who commit sexual assault. What I'm more worried about here is the tell the media before you tell the police mentality that this kind of stuff can exploit.
The method of actually accessing justice tells a lot about, the kind of justice that not only the person deserves, but what you deserve.
Right. And, if you're going to publicly humiliate a rapist, I have no issue with that. What if that person is genuinely innocent? We know what it does to people, okay? It drags their name through the mud. Bruce Lamon, obviously, he was allowed to be named before the trial happened, and it was the actual media pressure itself that resulted in charges being laid because, as we've covered many times before, ACT police did not believe there was enough evidence to press charges against him. So, Northern Territory is not exactly the figurative centre of Australia, so you'll be much less likely for a story like that to eventuate there, but you never know. There are, unfortunately, a lot of psycho women out there who will level false allegations against you, and they may have a myriad of reasons or motivations for doing so. Okay, now the other story is to do with it's at the Commonwealth level, to do with the Family Law Act. And it's talking about where, when you go to divorce court or whatever it is, it might also just be a de facto relationship where two people live together, sometimes not even that. You've got to go through that issue of who gets what. Generally speaking, even though the man is the one who divorced the most, the woman ends up getting 50% or sometimes even more. So what they want now is for the family court to consider family violence in terms of how property and assets are distributed. All right. So they want them to actually take into account how it would incur long-term economic costs to the victim if they were the victim of domestic violence. Okay. Again, I have very little sympathy if you've been bashing your wife or something, but let's also remember that this can encourage people to make false accusations against men. And when you have a mantra of "we believe survivors," they know there's a very good chance that the court is going to believe them. And you would not necessarily need a conviction of domestic violence. The family court would simply just decide on the balance of probabilities whether or not they will take domestic violence into account when it comes to actually divvying up what both parties get. So, yeah. That's the issue.
Sign a prenup.
Again. Yeah.
Get a prenup, sign a prenup. If she can't accept that, just tell her to go hit the road.
What's that?
Get a prenup, sign a prenup. If she can't accept that, just tell her to go hit the fucking road.
Yes. Okay, so what else we got here? A few kind of quick stories. We've got a Rockingham by-election coming up. That's an electorate and a suburb here in Western Australia. That was Mark McGowan's seat, of course. He resigned recently. The Liberal Party do not have a snowball's chance in hell of winning this. It is about as safe Labor seat as you can get. So they are running this. I don't know how old he is, but he looks like he's in his 20s. Clearly an experienced guy. And he made a bit of a slip up here. He wanted to know if the Labor candidate, who's a female, Magenta Marshall, if she were to fall pregnant, would she have to quit the parliament or at least go on maternity leave? Now, he figured that it would, that would not be something appropriate for him to ask her, like in a public forum or a debate. So what he did was he asked someone else, like a constituent, could you say during a press conference or a public meeting, just like stand up and ask her this question? Right?
Oh, he tried to scheme. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And not with a secured agent. What a dipshit. What a dipshit.
That would actually not be such a bad idea so long as you don't get caught. But, of course, he got caught. So so he's been forced to apologize for that. Also in WA, the abortion laws have just passed. We've covered this before, so I'll very quickly go over it. It removes the need for women to be referred for an abortion by a doctor, no longer requiring women to undergo mandatory counselling, and moving provisions out of WA's criminal code. So, it's just becoming more of a health issue. Also, the requirements that are imposed on long-term abortions will be applied from 23 weeks rather than 20 weeks. Look, the long and short of it is you can wait a longer time and still get an abortion. That's effectively what these changes mean. And, we're moving more towards, when they talk about harmonizing laws, we're harmonizing in the direction of Victoria, where you can abort a fetus up to 5 months, I believe, is what it is. All state and territories are moving in that direction. Now, there's an inquiry going on into adoption practices as well. Now, apparently, from the 1950s onwards, there were like 150,000 babies that were forcibly removed from Australian mothers. And apparently most of it happened here in WA. Now, we've got an inquiry into that. Now, they're also...
Let's find the racism.
Right, well, the scope of the inquiry is said to soon going to expand to donor-conceived children. Because, obviously, they're all adopted. Well, not all of them, not if you just somebody went on IVF or something like that, but if it's a surrogate. So,
yeah, surrogates. Yeah. Surrogates are going to be an interesting one.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see what they find here. But, what I'm most concerned about, especially those really early ones, is they're going to say this is part of the stolen generation.
Yes, yeah, they will.
And the only way they will decide that is simply if the child was of Aboriginal ancestry or not. Even if it's only 1/8 or 1/16 or whatever, that's actually somewhat better for the narrative because they can say that was the method of breeding out the color, as they put it.
I was going to say, I've got a guy who I've been talking to with about similar subjects about this, and he actually brought to my attention an article from 1933. And it was basically an article detailing, the killing of half-caste Aboriginal children by their perennial figure, or like a grandfather from their relation. But yeah, he actually showed me this article. I was like, holy shit. And it goes into is like, oh yeah, we surveyed several communities, and it looks like if a child is born a little bit too light-skinned, they just kill it. From 1933.
Right. But I mean, I also just want to know, even if we take the Aboriginal question out of it, when they talk about 150,000 babies being forcibly removed or whatever, okay, how many of them were justified though? You want to call it a forcible removal. A lot of the time, these are simply the state effectively confiscating the baby because it is going to grow up in a horrific environment.
Imagine getting a social worker to do shit.
Yeah, and look, even back in the 1950s, it was pretty hard to convince a social worker to confiscate a baby from a mother. Okay, it was still a very, very high bar. Now, it's even higher nowadays, of course, particularly if you're Aboriginal, because people are shit scared of being accused of, stealing black babies. But yeah, that's why when this inquiry's results are eventually released, or its findings are released, I'm going to take it with an enormous grain of salt, because
it's going to be one of those don't look at the headline, look at the data type situations.
Yes, definitely. And, if it doesn't actually then go and detail like the adoptions that they deem to have been wrong, and you don't actually tell me, well, what were the reasons, like what was going on with this baby in their house, with their mother, with their parents, I'm just going to say, well, look, I'm sorry, I doubt it, but I'm going to assume that baby would have grown up in an abusive household. I can't see it any other way.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of advisory boards and voices and all that kind of shit, we may not be aware, but in New South Wales, they actually do have this advisory board to the New South Wales government from religious communities. Now, this was effectively a compromise where, we've had a long-standing debate about having a religious freedom bill, which, of course, we never got through at the federal level. So what they did in New South Wales as a sort of a compromise was say, okay, well, look, let's just have an advisory board that can talk to the government on issues such as voluntary assisted dying or conversion practices, otherwise known as pray the gay away, whatever you want to call it. Now, as you would imagine, LGBT groups are demanding an equivalent body in New South Wales. Now, you see how it's this constant race to kind of outdo the other in terms of government privilege? This was effectively given to the religious communities because they couldn't get a religious freedom bill. They're like, okay, we understand that a lot of laws that have been passed lately are anti-Christian, whether it's adoption, abortion, voluntary assisted dying, conversion, gay marriage, whatever, all this stuff. It was all those things that forced, the religious lobbies to say, okay, we need some statutory protections here because we every bit of law that's being passed seems to be against our interests here. So finally, they gave them this little bit of reprieve, this little bit of counterbalance and say, okay, you can have an advisory board in New South Wales. Okay, it's not going to be shit then if the LGBT community then get their own advisory board, because that's just going to neutralize whatever influence they might have had. The LGBT group are effectively saying, if they've got one, then we deserve one. But what they're leaving out is the fact that all of this legislative change has been in their favor and against that of the churches. So it's misleading to say, oh no, this is just evening the scales. No, it's not. This itself, the advisory board, was an attempt to only very somewhat even the scales a little bit more back in the church's favor. And that's now going to be effectively neutralized.
And it's so full of spite and hatred on the other side, and you can see they're fucking... I'm going to have to give you a solid admission. I did share my the prep content with some Australian religious fellows that I do talk to, And I was just reading it out to them, reading the articles, and they're like, "Holy fucking shit! This is like a fucking. This isn't even an olive branch. This is a fucking olive twig, being given out, and the fucking reaction to it is immense. It starts hot and heavy, and almost immediately. Obviously, like joking there, but like, no, it was." The reaction was just so fucking bad. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I was going to say was that this would be an advisory board that would just be ignored anyway.
Yes.
I can't imagine, like all those issues I just named, like abortion and that, I cannot imagine, because remember, it's a Labor government now under Chris Minns. They're not going to listen to them at all. It's a token gesture to give the appearance that they're not biased against faith groups.
Yeah.
Nothing more. So yeah. Okay. Again in WA, we've got changes upcoming to our political donations laws. So this is being passed by our Attorney General and Electoral Affairs Minister John Quigley.
Who's he now? John Quigley.
He looks like the Thing from Fantastic Four, but with anorexia. That guy. So these changes, it's going to be where, well, you see, the current laws have that political donations that are under $16,300 can go undisclosed by declaring donations through the federal system. And that's become known as dark money that cannot be tracked. Don't know where it came from. Quigley is going to be closing that loophole, and basically means that political donations, no matter what their size, will have to be declared.
Disclosed. Yeah.
Which, look, it's still completely impossible to do that completely, because even politicians will engage in GoFundMe campaigns where people donate anonymously. They will go to a party meeting and, much like at a church, will just pass around a collection plate or something like that. You can't keep track of all of it. There's no way of doing that. But yeah, I guess I got nothing against that. Okay.
Something we have to talk about, but no. All right.
There was apparently... Have you heard of this accusation from the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, that India were backing the assassination of a Sikh leader in Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
I believe it. This is one of the instances where I actually agree with Justin Trudeau.
Right, but in Australia, we're now, like Penny Wong has said, she's expressed concern to the Modi government in India, basically because we're now afraid that something like that is going to happen here. And man, I can absolutely see it happening. Yep. Because, we've gone through a few times, like those clashes between Hindu and Sikh groups.
I love their assassination attempt over in fucking Canada, because like they went through they got the fucking like fake plate car, they got like the several fire squads, they got the guys in balaclavas. They're not ethnically Indian, the attackers, but also, here's a key detail you missed: they're combat harnesses.
Right.
Indian issued combat harnesses. Okay, there we go. You fucking dipshits. You fucking flowchart people. Like, seriously. Like, if you're gonna fucking do like a clandestine like assassination of a political opponent in another country, don't issue them your fucking combat harnesses. How about that?
Yeah, well, look, they won't admit it, but they obviously know that there is a risk of something like that, an assassination occurring in Australia.
Yep.
Simply because of the amount of Indians that we are taking in, and the fact that the ethnic rivalries that exist in India don't become extinguished once they move to Australia. They follow them. They come with them. So we don't just import these ethnic groups. We import the exact same ethnic tensions and conflicts that they came from in their home country.
That they bring here and that they exercise on streets. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure no Australian nationalist hasn't seen that video of Indians and Sikhs beating the ever-loving fuck out of each other in North Victoria or North Melbourne.
Right. Yeah. We
played that on XYZ Live.
Yes, and I'm sure that Penny Wong has seen that footage as well. And she sees that and she says, oh shit, what just happened in Canada can bloody well happen here. And she's right.
And it will, by the way, with or without state intervention.
Yeah. Okay, so we do have one bit of J news here. Now, I got this from an article that was just generally on anti-Semitism by Gerard Henderson from The Australian. And of course, he's basically trying to pin the blame on the left, as they like to do. So
doing a Shapiro.
He makes reference. I guess
he's trying to impress his new boss.
Right. Yeah. So one story that this is actually pretty recent. We had a judgment handed down in the Federal Court of Australia. This was on the 14th of September, 10 days ago. This was Kaplan versus the state of Victoria. And the state of Victoria, so that is the taxpayer, was ordered to pay the aggrieved party $430,000.
Nearly half
what was this
million.
About? So this, it found that the Victorian Department of Education was vicariously responsible for the bullying and harassment of Jewish students, 5 in total, from various dates. I think one dates back to 2017. I can't remember. Oh, no, sorry. Behavior that took place between 2013 and 2020.
You're still not appreciated.
Now, Gerard Henderson makes the point here. Oh, and by the way, look, obviously we're huge doubt on all of this stuff, but it was typical accusations were made, such as including the existence of graffiti consisting of Nazi swastikas and other forms of harassment and discrimination. All right, we know these kind of stories.
Every fucking little boy carves a fucking swastika into a toilet stall,
It's just people see it as just this evil symbol, Oh, look me, I'm a rebel.
I can cause shit. Yes, I put the symbol on the wall and it calls it shit. They'll sooner carve a pentagram.
It's why, Maoris use it. Are they actually National Socialists, or are they just trying to look mean? That's all it is. But anyway, Gerard Henderson makes the point here that because of the fact that the Victorian Labor government came to power in 2014, that their administration was there for the vast majority of the time where this vilification was said to have taken place. So in other words, Gerard Henderson is blaming the Victorian Labor government for these acts of discrimination that happened within the Victorian public school system to 5 students. Okay. Of course, he says that, these 5 students are just representative of a larger, more general problem that exists in Australia. I would assume particularly in Victoria, he's trying to say. Now, the Department of Education, interestingly, they did not admit to any of this, so they did not settle out of court. They fought it all the way, and that cost them $2 million. So all up, the taxpayer's been slugged for about $2.5 million because of this civil suit that took place. So he goes and names this survey that came out from the Social Research Centre. Now, I remember we read this one out at the time. It found that almost 2/3 of Jewish students, and here, by the way, we're specifically talking about universities, not schools, 2/3 of Jewish students experienced anti-Semitism at university, and that more than half of Jewish students had hidden their Jewish identity on campus to avoid its anti-Semitism. So you see how he's just kind of linking one thing to another. He's saying, all right, here's your specific story of 5 students getting bullied, and here's
my web of lies.
Yeah. Now, This next part, though, I have to read this out verbatim because this is classic. Because he must have thought twice about actually writing this. I'm surprised he included this, but anyway, here it is. It makes sense to regard such surveys with a degree of reservation. Most of the respondents came from a data bank supplied by the Australian Union of Jewish Students, covering individuals who had attended its events or were on its mailing list. No interviews were conducted. About a quarter of those contacted responded to the survey by answering an online questionnaire. Okay.
Oh, geez. So we've double positively selected right here.
Right. This was not a random survey. It was, for a starter, yeah, you're right. Like it's double dipping. Like they got the people from the Jewish University, what was it called? Australian Union of Jewish Students. And then only a quarter of them went and responded to online questions. Right. So it's like, almost by Jared Henderson's own admission here, this study was completely flawed. Completely and utterly flawed and not represented at all. So you can't then go and say that what these 5 students apparently experienced in the Victorian public school system is representative of a more prevalent form of anti-Semitism existing across the country. You cannot, when you yourself just admitted that this survey was bullshit.
Jews are untouchable on university campuses.
Yeah. Okay, look, we both actually got to go soon, so just going to do 3 stories just real quickly. One, we got a delegation of Australians that includes Barnaby Joyce and the Greens, what's his name, David Shoebridge, in the UN. They're agitating for Julian Assange to be released. You got no chance of that, guys. Not going to happen.
No.
Even though, I basically do want him to come out, to get out, I should say. Josh Frydenberg will not be returning in the next election cycle because he is now the leader of Goldman Sachs Australia. He had been working with them before, but now he's basically got a promotion that's too good for him to refuse.
I wonder why that happened.
So I forget what the exact title is. I'm not finding it in this article.
But he's Chief basically...
look, he's the leader. Okay, he's the leader.
Head rabbi of Goldman Sachs.
Okay. Now, to leave this episode on a good note, the last story I wanted to cover was, Nolsey, did you read the hit pieces on Stephen Wells?
Yes, I did.
I certainly did.
Yes, I absolutely fucking did. I still love Stephen to this day.
So Stephen Wells was a regular contributor, writer on XYZ. He also came on XYZ Live a number of times. He was on other things like the Uncockables and that. He wrote an article talking about how white nationalists should run for local council. And he went through a bunch of advantages that exist as opposed to running in the parliamentary system. He's now running as a councillor in Busselton, which is down where he lives. Now, like a week or two later after he wrote that article, we had him on XYZ Live, and we briefly discussed it, I think 20-minute discussion or so on this, and he reiterated the points that he made in the article. Now what they're trying to say is that Stephen Wells is responsible for a covert and secretive campaign to usurp power in the Busselton Council, and that he tried his very best to keep all of this secret. Well, as I just said, the article was published under his name on xyz.net.au, and he appeared under his real name and with himself on camera on XYZ Live talking about the exact
and
same
you should
article.
Still vote for him.
I know this because I was hosting the show. So, no, he did not do any of this in secret whatsoever. He did say that people won't, generally speaking, won't know who you are, and that's why you should go and do it. But you cannot apply that kind of plan, if you want to call it that, to himself, considering he has been completely out there and open under his own name, expressing his own views.
He's a hard-ass superstar.
Yeah. But I mean, also the second point I would just make to all of that is that every other candidate for council, just about every single other one, never ever talks about their broader ideological platform. They only ever talk about local issues because that's what you're supposed to talk about. You're running for the council. So yes, you're going to talk about roads and rubbish and rates, the 3 R's of councils, as they say. We've covered many times how the Greens have employed this strategy so that they can get into power in local councils and then call off Australia Day celebrations. For example, Stephen just basically said, look, everyone else is doing it. Why don't we? Okay. So if you're going to condemn him for spreading what is a disingenuous, cynical plot to assert power for white supremacists, you're going to have to say that for the Greens as well, and probably most other councillors out there who are more than likely members of at least one political party and have their own political agenda too. You cannot just apply it to Stephen, okay? It's a stupid thing. And by the way, they quoted Stephen as saying that any race with a high degree of criminality will have a high degree of homosexuality.
Stolen quote.
Stolen quote. I said that. Okay. So I don't know if they're just trying to not give us any oxygen. Or
I got a fucking huge laugh on Rambot's show when I fucking reiterated that and said here's a quote from my friend Opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I never got the credit for that. And I don't think they could have confused my voice for Stephen Wells's pronounced British accent. But also, I don't know if you saw, there was another piece out in Perth, which is, as you can imagine, a gay publication. They said that one of the panelists said it was exhilarating to yell an anti-gay slur in someone's face. That was me as well who said that. But they referred to me as a panelist. I was like, guys, I hosted that show.
What?
So yeah, we always complain about how the racer doesn't get a mention in the ECAJ annual report on anti-Semitism. And Ryan and David are always telling me, no, the reason why, it's not because they haven't noticed you, it's because they don't want to give you any oxygen. After I read these articles on Stephen Wells, I was like, okay, I think I believe that now. They actually quoted me twice in 2 separate articles without, attributing the quotes properly. So, yeah. But no, if you live in the Busselton area, vote for him. I don't agree with everything Stephen says, but he would be a hell of a lot better than pretty much any councillor in the country at this point.
I consider him a personal friend, so vote for him. Your overlord said so.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway.
Well, thanks, guys. That was our comeback episode 191 of The Racer's War. Please check us out at theracer.biz, and we'll be back in about a week for the next episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.